Hello and welcome to this very special panel for Wicked. My name is Joe Utiki and I'm thrilled to be your moderator and to introduce you to our brilliant panel. Please welcome Pablo Helman, who's the film's VFX supervisor. We have Myron Kerstein, who is the film's editor. And we have Andy Nelson, the film's music and dialogue re-recording mixer. Welcome all. I wonder if I can start by asking for each of you whether you had kind of an affinity for Wicked, for The Wizard of Oz, like the history, whether there was any of that in your backgrounds before you sort of dive into this project.
My background is actually music. So I started as a musician a long time ago when I was young. So I just kind of migrated into visual effects. And I've been doing this for a long time, but this is my first musical. And it was an incredible kind of a meeting of kind of going full circle when we got to the set. And for me, it was always about the images at the beginning and at the end. But the music just kind of put it all together. The same way that when you're watching a movie, you don't really know where the music is coming from, but it kind of gives you an emotional response.
Mm. Yeah, and in America we would have The Wizard of Oz playing every holiday there is, Thanksgiving, Christmas, what have you. So it was just on repeat, and so we just grew up with The Wizard of Oz in our lives. And I used to be so scared of the flying monkeys and everything that came with it, but it just, the magic, the music was just part of our DNA. And then, of course, when I got a chance to see the stage show, that became also a big part of my life. Bringing my son when he was 6, he's 18 now, and seeing how he responded. He's crying in the audience, I'm crying in the audience, connecting to these characters and the music. And so I would just say Oz has been part of our lives as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I feel same way. I mean, for me, I've always loved musicals. And when I saw the show, which is many years ago now, within 10 minutes, I said to my wife, "This is cinema." The whole feel of the show felt cinematic to me. Never imagining I would ever get to work on it. And so for me, that journey and going to meet Jon Chu on the set and realizing that this was actually going to happen was like a dream come true. Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I do think that, pretty much since the show premiered, people have expected that it would eventually be a movie, right? But it has taken 20 years to arrive. And it feels to me like there's a sense that every single person that's involved in this, needed to exist in this right moment in their careers to make it. I mean, it feels like an incredible marriage. I know you have a history with Jon. Tell me how he first introduced this project to you.
Well, I've been working with Jon since Crazy Rich Asians, so it's going on 7-8 years now, and I'm, then we worked on In the Heights together, which was another musical, and so right when we were finishing In the Heights, there was little rumors, little whispers of possibly working on this together, and of course I was really excited because. This is the musical. This is Broadway history. This is you only get a chance to make something this big, this IP, and to be part of something so big that's so a big part of so many people's lives was really exciting and also intimidating. But with Jon, with every project, we're like, well, how do we raise the bar? How do we meet the challenge? And how do we do better with every project? And of course, there's a great pride when somebody you've been working with wants to bring you on to the next project, and then I'm bringing on something that means so much to so many people, and is a big bet with the studio. It's a big bet with the fans, but of course, I couldn't be any more excited. Of course, it took a couple years of development, and so I just keep hearing more and more of it as I work alongside with him. But and then to be on the other side of it. 3 years later, I've been on it for since production, and cutting it for a year and a half. So to just now have the chance to see how the audience now receives it, that's just the dream come true.
Yeah. Well, can I ask, was it always part of the conception that this would be 2 films?
Yes, I read 2 scripts. I read the first script, playing the Broadway soundtrack at the same time reading the script, and just cry. At the end of Defying Gravity, I was literally weeping the same way that I hope the audience feels at the end of this first film. And then the second film had, it's a whole different tone and finishing the story arc. But having worked on In the Heights, we knew how hard it was to cut down musical numbers or the things in between musical numbers to make it into like a film that it wasn't 5 hours long. And that's so Jon knew that if he wanted to expand the universe in any way, then we had to cut it in half essentially, and then we could have time to sit with the characters. We have time to expand the world and world build, and I think it was a really smart decision. Otherwise you just rush through it. Otherwise, it's a big musical montage. It's a big music video. Otherwise,
it's interesting because Myron and I discussed some of this when I first became involved, because my experience on some musicals has been that you tend to go from song to song. There's not a lot of development. And for me, dynamically, trying to create this mix with the incredible sound team that was with us, we had some of the best, literally, in the world. And it allowed these dynamics to really play out. We could go very big, but we could go very, very quiet because you had the time to breathe. And I think it was for me, it was a phenomenal choice to do these as two movies, yeah.
I think it's also the cinema part of it. Differences between musical theater and the fact that you're there, you're witnessing something, whereas in cinema you have the opportunity to get really, really close and understand backgrounds and backstories and things like that, and feel part of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. The curious thing is, like, having seen the movie, I do not now feel like I'm sitting in the world's longest intermission waiting for the second one, as excited as I am for the second one.
We are too.
But I'm curious, does that add a layer of challenge, especially to the edit, to make sure that, you can deliver a satisfying, complete picture each time?
Yeah, absolutely. The hardest bet is, will the audience be satisfied at the end of the first act of the stage show? We have to make them feel satisfied that they had watched a complete movie. We were hoping that we could build a sort of Empire Strikes Back sort of cliffhanger that feels both satisfying, like, okay, we've completed the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West, and essentially the first movie is about establishing these friendships, these characters, and also Elphaba's origin story. And if we could feel like, okay, this is the birth of a superhero, unlike anyone we have seen before, and then the second movie is about consequences and the choices, and what do we do with the things once we get them, once we've made relationships and also broken relationships and what have you, then hopefully those two movies will feel complete, feel like a complete journey to an audience.
Mm. Andy, I'd like to ask about, we're not joined today by Simon Hayes, who I know was recording the singing on set. The extraordinary thing here is that this is all live sung, Can you just explain a little bit about how the process works for people who won't be familiar?
Yes, indeed. So obviously, look, when you first go onto a set when you're dealing with lighting, costumes, things like that, and the actors themselves, you don't quite know how live something can be. On this occasion, everybody was pulling together and wanted to make this work live, particularly Cynthia and Ari, of course, and Jon. And they couldn't have picked a better recordist than Simon Hayes. He and I have worked together over the years, and he's developed that skill so brilliantly. Part of the trick is you do pre-record your actors, obviously the songs, because you don't know how much he's going to be capable to capture live. So you pre-record those with all the same microphones, so that when you're on set, you can go for live, and if at any point a word or two has to go in from a pre-record, it's going to match in perfectly because it's all been recorded in the same style. That's the key to it. But funnily enough, during the mix itself, even when we would put the odd word of a pre-record in because of something, if there was a dance move, Jon and we would all say, oh, maybe we should check the live on that and see if it's workable. And then Robin Bainton, our vocal editor and engineer would say, I think this might work, and suddenly we'd pop it back in. So we kind of went more and more into the live world, even more than we started with, because it was so captivating. There's nothing like it. Well, I've always said with a pre-record, somehow, however brilliant it is, it's like watching something through a thin pane of glass. There's something that just disconnects. You take that away with live, and suddenly they're on stage right in front of you. And that's the difference. And I think there's a massive connection with that. And it was such a smart move for everybody to want to do this one live. And boy, were there some tough moments with Cynthia hanging, singing live. I mean, crazy moves.
Yeah.
But
it was amazing. Even at the end, we were basically, working with Defying Gravity, and we're like, okay, let's now go to the live, and we're like, there's no way that this is going to sound amazing. Like, oh my God, this even beats somebody who's in a controlled studio environment still, and just feeling the emotion and
the connection.
And
incredible.
And also having the dialogue and the live vocals just feel seamless to each other, and just I think that's what's so amazing about this particular musical, is that it all feels connected to the scene. So there is not this sort of like, now let's start the song and the story will drop away. Like I just feel like we're constantly involved. We're the dramatic tension's always there, and
well, the lyrics are words, the scripts.
Dialogue,
I mean, they're dialogue.
Yeah.
So it's actually when I started the mix, I didn't even put the sound effects and music in. I literally just concentrated on dialogue and vocals, because to me it didn't matter if they were singing or talking; they were still telling a story. And so I kind of got that first before we put all the other ingredients
I think that's
together.
the same approach that John had directing Cynthia and Ari, and that was my approach to cutting a scene. Like, it was all performance-based. There was no difference between someone singing and acting in a scene in any other way. So I think that just makes a very unique experience that I think a lot of other musicals, even the greats, didn't have these abilities and tools. And
well, it makes it accessible. I think that's the thing.
I think also, we're all looking for the truth kind of a thing, and we pick up from everybody, on set and editing and from the director. And so the same feeling that you guys have about, an actor naturally coming up with a delivery, it helps my work because I'm always in visual effects trying to, find something that looks photorealistic and things like that. And just the effort of an actor trying to sing while she's hanging and moving around, it makes it real. So my job is a lot easier because of that.
Well, give me a sense of the scope of your work on this project, Pablo, because I've seen a lot of behind-the-scenes footage from set and these incredible builds that were created for the film. But of course, the Land of Oz is this incredible place that you just can't find a location and point a camera at it. How many VFX shots are in this movie, and where did your work begin?
My work began with Myron about 3 years ago. That's when we all met and started scouting. I can tell you a little bit about it. I don't want to say a lot because I think that's part of the illusion of saying, when does this start and when does this other thing start? But I can tell you that there have been 2,200 visual effects shots. So it's pretty much every shot is a visual effects shot. I think our work has a lot to do with finishing something that was started on set, and it has a lot to do with John's and Myron and Alice's and Andy and everybody else way of working the process, which is starting with something that is in camera and then finishing the content and helping with the storytelling. And that's pretty much the way I like to do it. It's a privilege to be able to finish somebody else's sentence.
I think, to me, the mark of great digital environments is that you can look at a behind-the-scenes shot and almost not notice the difference between that and the final frame. That, the digital extension, if that's what you want to call it, has kind of been so seamless. Of course, the other challenge on this film is, you have these incredible animals that somehow embody. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before with talking animals, Like, we've definitely seen animals talk, but these these are intelligent creatures, and you really capture that in the movie. What was the challenge there? Like, where did you begin trying to figure that out?
I think the beginning of trying to figure that out is giving the director something to direct. And so, we could have, I've been in situations before where I'm talking to somebody and saying, you realize that 50% of what you're directing is not going to be right there in front of you. So how are we going to solve that? And one of the ways to solve it is to say, okay, why don't we just cast somebody and bring that person in to play that character, and then you'll be able to direct it. And some of the conversations with Myron and Jon were like, are we going to actually give direction to that person, or to that character, basically? And the answer is yes, you do, because when you cast somebody, you're doing it because that actor will bring something into the set and into the interaction with another actor. And that means making choices regarding timing. You will notice that when we're talking, we're not only making eye contact, but we're looking at you and looking at the background, doing other things, and that actually is part of the scene, and that's what makes it real. So we brought out an animal unit, about 15 people, that everybody had their own animals. And then they would act, and Jon would direct them. And then we would do all the science part, which is not a lot of fun, but it's what makes putting a digital creature in the scene completely seamless, which is taking a look at the lighting, taking a look at the materials, how the lighting bathes you on a specific light. And once you do that, then the creature looks like it's there.
And then is the movement, motion capture? Is it keyframe? Is it a mix of the both? Like, how does that work?
It's a combination of. I think we all found it. It's a combination of things. It was a motion capture, meaning we didn't want to put Jon through the process of waiting or seeing, or even actors taking a look at markers in somebody's face. So we let them do, and also because the animals don't necessarily correlate with the topology of a human, but we were looking for what that human was portraying at the time, and so it was our challenge to find that specific choice that Myron and Jon had onto an animal.
Well, let's go back to the music if we can, because the one thing that I think is I'm especially intrigued to ask about is when you have this. First of all, I did get to see a little behind the scenes clip that just features Cynthia singing, and I say just, I mean, it's extraordinary, but with no music, so and you can feel the power of it as if there is a full orchestra behind her, so it's there in the performance. But I wonder how you then work with the composers and the orchestra in making sure that everything kind of marries in a way that feels like everything is happening all at the same time, which of course we know it isn't.
It isn't. Well, the thing for me was that I spent a long time listening to the original Broadway cast because I wanted to get into the DNA of every song and understand what was going on balance-wise and with all the different instruments. But it all changed when I heard the orchestra, because I came into London to witness the recording of it and realized within 10 minutes this was just a game changer. Forget everything I'd learnt from those songs. I now had to start from scratch. Because it was so elevated, So it was just a natural progression that each song demanded a certain way of approaching it. All the orchestra was recorded here in London, and Greg Wells, who was the music producer, then took that and added all the percussion elements, the drums, guitar, bass, keyboards, things that he played and produced. And then I ended up with a myriad of choices in front of me that all added together into this sort of sonic, wonderful, it was so much fun to play with. And then, but you put those two voices in there and they just drive it all. I mean, again, I go back to the thing of that they became the focus, and then it was just wrapping it around with the orchestra. The beauty was that I had, as I said earlier, by having the length of the film be what it is, it allowed these incredible dynamics. You know, Nobody Mourns the Wicked can be as big and as strong as you want, as thunderous. I'm Not That Girl. I remember when we were mixing that, I wanted that to start so quietly, so delicately, because I'd had the time, the allowance to do that. Everything that I did musically with the balance of the orchestra and everything was purely dictated by what the singers had done. And that's how I presented it to Myron and Jon. And we kind of tinkered and fooled and played, but I think the basic concept worked.
Yeah, I love when we're on the mix stage and working on like Wizard and I. And I would always like, let's push the music here. And Andy's like, no, wait for it. And he just knew how to let Cynthia sort of basically guide us to build those musical numbers. And almost every musical number just builds and builds and builds over the course of it, and you just feel the power, and to have because you can do anything on that mixing stage. And you know, Andy, again, when we first had lunch together and talked about the movies, is like it's all about the dynamics. Like it's about the quiet moments and the big moments, and not to exhaust the audience, and also to feel the power of the music and the power of the character, the power of the storytelling. And so something like Wizard and I, which just builds into this amazing Sound of Music sort of climax. And I've never experienced anything like that on a mixing stage. The same with Defying Gravity with that ending. And that's just a long tune when you're starting and stopping, and using the orchestra, the lot of pieces of the John Powell score interweaved in there. There's just a lot of balls in there.
Yeah, I mean, we knew Defying Gravity was going to be, that was our, okay, so this is where we have to end up. How do we get there, you know? But along the way, there's many hills and valleys, of course. But it was just one of those feelings, to be honest with you. It wasn't like I had an instruction book of how this was going to balance. I watched the image. All I do is watch the big screen all the time, and I have some faders underneath it, and I just respond to how I feel.
Some of it also is part of the music, you know, the kind of the texture of it that starts, like you say, you know, very slowly, and then all of a sudden, you know, 1 minute into the song, you see all these other themes that were part of the beginning, but they all interweave, and it brings you in.
Yeah, well, I think you touched on my next question there, Andy, which is that I think inherent to each of your crafts, and perhaps all crafts in filmmaking, is instinct. You know, and it's something that I guess, you know, you have to begin with, that you then hone and get even sharper with over the course of a career. But I wonder for each of you, you know, how essential it is to trust your instincts, and I suppose, you know, whether there are moments where you're struggling, I guess, to find, you know, what the answer is in any situation. You just know something's wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you know, from my case, talking about instinct, you know, I review things over and over, and if I always feel the same way about something, I know that there's something there that needs to change, and sometimes I exhaust that. I mean, I need to put it away. And come back a couple of days later.
A refresh or something.
Yes, and that also, I see it in everybody, you know, and Jon also. Sometimes that's why, you know, sometimes we go to Jon and say, you know, what do you think about this? And he say, well, let me think about it, or something like that. You need a time to that thing to develop and come and get you.
I think, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years, but only in the last maybe decade, I felt like I was starting to exercise this muscle as far as like how my heart is connecting to the material and how that relates to my instincts. So I was like getting really good on the technical side, but I didn't have the muscle yet to connect things emotionally. And so now I think a lot of that comes with working with Jon, where we're just sort of like, how do we connect to things emotionally? How do we want to be as storytellers? You know, how do we want to manipulate the audience, give space to the audience to feel things, find their own way, and so those instincts just take time to develop. And then once you start to have them, you're like, okay, there's something telling me that I need to put this performance in the movie. Oz's Ballroom, they shot these long 9 to 10 minute takes of Cynthia entering the room, to the end of the scene of Ari and Cynthia, Elphaba and Glinda leaving, and I was like, well, how do I cut this? Every take is making me feel I want to cry while I'm watching it, and I was like, okay, my instincts is just telling me that this is within all this magic. Now I could just take this little piece of material and put it aside and build this beautiful sequence. But I think that it's a muscle that you just keep sort of developing, working, and believing in over the years.
I think so too. I agree with that. I mean, I have the luxury that, when I get the film in front of me, these gentlemen have done a lot of their work, particularly Myron. Pablo's still working on things, but it's all coming together.
Still working
it's
on
all
it.
coming. He's going to be still working on them forever. It comes together. So for me, there it is up on the screen in front of me. And I was told many, many years ago by a really brilliant sound mixer that if ever I got lost in a scene, just remember that all the answers are on the screen. And I've never forgotten that, because again, all that means is the story is happening, and you have to make sure you're telling the story with the sound. So I think that's where the instinct comes in. If ever, we have a lot of tools we play with, a lot of different sound ideas, but sometimes you want to turn it off and just remind yourself exactly what that scene is doing. Why is that cut there? Why has Myron made that edit right at that moment? There's a reason for that. We have to respond to that. And so that's where the feelings just keep growing and the instincts grow. And I think for me, it's just happened over years of doing this work with many different directors, where you just sort of become a sponge and absorb all those ideas, and then it just manifests itself in the work you're doing.
You keep presaging all of my questions, as we are about to run out of time. But I want to ask about directors. You have worked with the most incredible Steven Spielberg like 20 times, and you've each worked with incredible directors too. I sort of personally feel that Jon Chu is sort of very instrumental in this revival of the musical. And I'd love to just finally ask you each what makes him special as a director.
Well, for me, he gives me the freedom to have a voice, to be an artist, to put my DNA in the movie. He empowers each of us as craftspeople to bring a part of our heart and our love and our talent to something. And of course, we're all like, look, we're going to give you 2,000% because you want to do that. He's a leader, a visionary in that way. Not to mention like how everything, his brain. He's a wonder kid. He's ever since Spielberg discovered him straight out of film school. But at the end of the day, I think the reason why he's so loved is that he gives us freedom to be artists. And there's not judgment. He's just like, what do you have? What are you going to bring to this? And he says there's a cliche that we rewrite the movie every single time through the process, and the post process is the last rewrite. And again, he allows me to be a co-parent, part of the rewriting. And I love the fact that he treats everybody in the same way through the process. The composer, the music editor, sound design, VFX artists, the craftsmen, and the construction builders, and
there's no hierarchy.
No.
He's very even. And for me, because I hadn't worked with him before, I just had to get to know him. I got to know him very quickly. I realized there's a lot of trust there. And he was very happy for me to have opinions, to think. I didn't know how it would collaborate, but it was joyful. And I tell you, the one thing that blew my mind was that he gets very emotional as well, because when he sees something and it's working, you get that feeling from him. He's got a big heart, and I loved it. I responded to that tremendously.
Yeah, our job, I think everybody's job, is to get inside the director's head, because you are basically there to provide choices. And but I've always been amazed about the questions that he asked you, because I do a lot of listening. But once he asks you a question, that means that he's open to whatever we have to say. I always, think, what is the question behind the question? Why is he asking that? And so that allows me also to be a little more open.
Just to add one more thing is that you could tell, like, he asked the studio to build these sets, have hundreds of extras, all these costumes, big VFX, big music with huge orchestras. He has a love for cinema. Like he wants to bring us back to connect the promise with the audience of what cinema was. And I think that he just has a love for all these craftspeople, how people make things. And I don't know, it's a bit of a throwback.
Yeah, sure.
As young as he is like there's this.
He's an old soul.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
the love of cinema.
I think one of the things there also is great is getting used to his reactions. You know, sometimes you're showing him something and you don't know, what's going to happen, and then there's this little smile. Okay.
Well, listen, on that lovely note, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on the movie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.